So we are joined today by two amazing humans who are the sparks that gave rise to the Less Lawn, More Life campaign with whom Plant Baby Plant is partnering. And we're honored to have with us Joanna Hall, who is the CEO of Wildr Places, whose bold vision is to rewild America one yard at a time, and by Zoe Evans, who serves as Vice President of Partnerships for Wildr Places. She's also the campaign leader and coach for Less Lawn, More Life. And we're grateful that you have taken time away from planting to join us. And I think that the best place to start would just be with each of you introducing yourselves and then telling us a bit about Planet Wild, about Wildr Places, and the Less Lawn, More Life campaign. So, friends, what are you up to?
Zoe, do you want to start?
Sure. So as Robin mentioned, thank you, Robin, for having us here. I manage the Less Lawn, More Life campaign. We've got over 25,000 people across North America working to give back a part of their yards or any space they have. It could be a balcony as well, to nature to support wildlife. And I come from spending the last few years working with homeowners who want to do this on their own. They want to DIY. And part of what we've learned is that there's so many incredible resources out there, but it can still feel really intimidating. So what we try to do with this campaign is serve up a science and research back series of steps that you can take to make a difference and give you resources and point you in the right direction at the right point, and then provide extra tools along the way to help it happen. And so I bring my background in neurobiology and translational science and doing some design, helping people design yards that they love, and combine all of that with our incredible partnerships to bring this campaign to life. And I'm just honored to get to work alongside Joe and all of the incredible people and partners that make all of this work happen.
Awesome. Thank you, Zoe.
Yes, and I just have to say, Zoe is the most incredible co-pilot. So we are working very hard, but actually we're having so much fun in this journey. And I think a lot of it is just, who you get to work with. Um, So my background is actually quite different. My background is in software innovation and technology, which often surprises people. We have for the past 10 years or so run, my husband and I, it's a bit of a family business, a local ecological landscape design firm called Planet Wild. But actually my primary day job was working and running a software innovation studio. But always on the side, I've been obviously personally obsessed and very passionate about nature, but also watching the movement grow and grow very locally here in our region. And sort of began to see it as an opportunity to kind of merge my two passions and say, hey, we know that if we could leverage technology to make this movement, to make the science, to make the inspiration more accessible to more people, perhaps we could make all of this go faster. And so that's kind of been a little bit of sort of how these two pieces of my kind of world sort of have come together.
Well, that is a powerful combination of skill sets. And as you say, perhaps a little bit unexpected, but you really turn both of those tools and approaches to this beautiful work. I want to read to our listeners who might not be as familiar with your work yet, a quote from you, which I really love because it resonates with me because it's so aligned with the plant baby plant way of being as well. To seed change by drawing on people's love for the land, that you both just evinced, drawing on love rather than fear. And the quote that I want to share is: in the face of unprecedented ecological collapse, we aim to transform America's 44 million acres of lawns, more land than all the national parks combined, into vibrant native ecosystems that restore nature. We believe that positive change happens through inspiration, not fear. When people experience the joy of watching butterflies in their garden, hear birdsong return to their neighborhood, and feel the satisfaction of contributing to something bigger than themselves, restoration will become contagious. And that metaphor of a contagion of restoration is really powerful. And I would love to hear from you both about what do you think are the drivers of that contagion? What are the tools of inspiring the change that you are hoping to provoke?
I love this question. And it's funny because we talk about it a lot as a team. We talk about it as this moment, this tipping point. And when a homeowner, a land steward, an individual sort of has their own aha moment, their own moment of wonder with nature, that suddenly becomes a beautiful slippery slope to doing more restoration, more time outside, more planting native plants. And we literally talk about it as a KPI internally as a team to say our role is to get more and more individuals, newbies. We focus very much on bringing new people into this movement to reach that tipping point. And so, it's sort of for varies for different people, but is it the first time that you've seen a hummingbird, right? Is it the first time that you've planted something yourself and then you actually noticed that it attracted and supported wildlife, the very wildlife that it said it was the host plant for? These are the small moments of wonder that sort of get people a little bit addicted to say, wait a minute, that actually worked, right? And part of the reason that we developed the app was to sort of make it more accessible and easy for people to sort of reach that tipping point, that moment, because we were seeing it locally here with Planet Wild with clients, right? Literally, we'll show up with flats of native plants. We'll start planting them. No joke, butterflies arrive, and the clients are like floored, right? And so it's like, how do you bring someone along that maybe isn't really used to spending much time even in their garden at all, right? You have to sort of make it accessible, make it light, make it fun, intrigue them with some fun facts about what might be happening outside, and then hopefully help get them to that moment where then what we've noticed is it becomes that, again, a slippery slope to just wanting to do more, right? And plant more native plants and see what other wildlife I can support and now attract birds, and so forth.
I love that wonder is the currency here. That's beautiful. Zoe, is there anything you wanted to add to the tools of contagion?
Yeah, I think another piece of it is a sense of agency. And so much of, what's happening around us, we can feel like we have no control and no way to maybe make change. And there are so many ways, whether it's planting a plant, removing, something that's crowding out species, if it is, telling a neighbor about this, all of these ways that we can have agency in our own backyard to affect positive change, and then also remember that we are not separate from everything. And so I think that's part and parcel with that feeling of wonder, of remembering that we are actually a part of all this and that we have a role in stewardship here. Like, we are not just supposed to step back and do nothing or impose our will upon everything, but to be in relationship and conversation and dialogue with it. And I think what I've seen a lot when I work with coaching clients and with all the folks in the campaign is that remembering there's so many different ways to make a difference, whether it's planting a plant or turning off your lights at night, you are helping steward all of this and you can make such positive change.
Mm. Yeah, there's so many ways, and for people to feel that they have a sense of power, that they don't have to sit by passively while the world falls apart, right? That we can be part of this. And I understand that in your work, collaboration is a real core value for both of you. I see it just in our interactions, and you've spoken before about not building from scratch when good work and the concepts already exist, about this notion of the work lifts all boats. I'd love to hear more about that and maybe your reflections on the ways that the concepts of things like reciprocity and the gift economy are practiced in your work specifically and maybe more broadly in the rewilding community.
Sure. So you want to start?
Sure. So in general, we don't view ourselves as the experts in this space. We are here to we kind of use some of the language of be the mycelial layer to connect all of these incredible resources and people and content that exists, and then use technology to elevate it and get it in front of people when it's the right time for them to see it. But we are not the experts on all of these incredible topics. We just want to surface it at the right time. And there's amazing people doing this work. I mean, one of the gifts of my life is to get to talk with everybody who's doing this every day, because they're all in it for such incredible reasons and they bring such incredible backgrounds to it. And so on the mutualism piece, I think that idea of, we are part of an ecosystem that is helping everybody thrive and grow. And so when we elevate one partner's resources in the campaign and drive people there, and they might discover more resources in that on that website or in those tools that help them, that helps everyone. And so that kind of drives everything about how we move through this space. And also there's so many different aspects, as we just talked about, of what people can do and what they might connect with, that we wouldn't want to try to be the experts in all that, nor can we. And so there's so many places for people to go. And we just know that our attention is thin. There's a lot going on. And so can we just put it in front of them at the right time when it might connect with them?
Yeah, I'll add to that. I mean, I spent 5 or 6 years working with the United Nations on a platform that was all about, it was called it is called the Global Coalition on Sustainability. It's a nonprofit to enable sort of nation states to collaborate more effectively on the Sustainable Development Goals. And so it's sort of built into my DNA, and I've learned so much through some of those very macro theoretical conversations that um, we're not going to achieve our goals as a society, as a humanity, unless we collaborate. We've reached a stage of evolution where there's no more extracting, right, to do. We need to come together. And it's really about that term, that mutualism. And there is no new territory. There is no new solution. There's no nothing. It's new combinations that unlock new levels of value, potential, and opportunity. And so it's sort of just in our DNA as a team that it's always first things first. How can we collaborate, right? Versus us going out and trying to build a thing. How can we team up? How can we join forces? Strength in numbers, right? And so it's just been a beautiful thing, I will say, because I've seen collaboration has been in my career in various different stages, but in this space in particular, the receptivity, the openness from all the partners, all the organizations, because everyone is realizing that we're at a new moment and no one can achieve their own individual goals without, true collaboration to advance the broader whole. There is so much restoration to do, not just for, the planet and the wildlife, right, and the species that depend on us, but also as a humanity, right? There's just so much work to do that the only hope that we have it is to come together and be so much smarter about how we collaborate.
Mm. Absolutely. And this holistic, integrative approach, I think, is what we need for the road ahead. When we face so many challenges to, broadly speaking, sustainability, we're looking for common ground. And what could be more common than the ground?
Yes,
The
yes.
way that this brings us together from many disciplines, many approaches. I think it's exactly what we need. So thank you for your leadership in that space. And one of the things that, as I've looked at the Less Lawn More Life campaign, which I so admire, is the way that you're so effective at pairing inspiration with education, which is based in the science of restoration and habitat creation, and at the same time leveraging technology to help provide this on ramp for people. So you're just making it easier to help the land. And here you are, a few years right into the campaign. We'd love to hear what you have learned so far, and perhaps also coupled to that, your sense of what does this movement need in order to catch fire even more.
Um, I'll take the second question, I think, just quickly in terms of what does it need. I think it needs more simplicity and perhaps a little bit more grace in terms of meeting people where they are. And we're so let me explain those. So simplicity, one of the learnings that over the years is we really want to bring new people into the movement. Right? That's a big goal. How do we make this more mainstream? We know it works. It works, and it's amazing for the humans that participate in it, right? So we should be doing more of this. How do we bring more people in? Um, but we find that folks are quite intimidated by the science, and sometimes the material can be presented in a very sort of academic or very specific way that intimidates people, right? And so I think one of the learnings has been how do we make it very, simple, like bring them in a simple way, make that accessible. But of course, it needs to be scientifically credible. It needs to be accurate. We need to give the right, recommendations and so forth. So start really simple, understanding that for some folks, it's not their fault. They have been taught to mow their lawn exactly this way and put down chemicals, and that's what all their neighbors do. And it never dawned on them. And then you have the conversation, and they're like, wow, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I didn't even know chemicals were bad for my pets, right? And so then so I would say that's one big thing is just simplicity of the message. And I think if all of us in our own ways start by thinking about the individual that is new to this, I think that will also help open up the aperture and bring it even more kind of mainstream. And now, from my perspective, so I come from technology. Yes, I help my husband run the local business, but I'm not a botanist. I'm not an ecologist. I just love nature, right? And so, even myself entering the movement and having conversations with partners and clients, I felt intimidated. I felt like a fraud, right? Because I didn't know exactly what invasive, was, appropriate in my ecoregion and, exactly how to ID plants and so forth. And so I think there can be a little bit of perfectionism, sort of being the enemy of good, perhaps sometimes. And so how do we, meet individuals with grace and just say we're learning, we're starting. There's always so much more to learn. But that's a big role that we're trying to play. Make it simple, make it accessible.
And I'll add on to that, I guess, a couple of learnings about, behavior change, because we're hearing so much kind of devastating news every day. And we've talked about, the paralysis of overwhelm of that. And I think, one of the pieces is we want to present the science and the facts in a simple way. We want to thread those facts together. So the idea of why plant native plants? Okay, native plants support caterpillars. Caterpillars are beautiful creatures in and of themselves and also feed baby birds. Baby birds are declining, all of this. So threading these facts together and then giving you an action you can take. So rather than just hearing like, okay, this is all going and we can't do anything about it, it's like, I can do something. And that being key. And I think the other piece is touching on something else we talked about, which is like seeing ourselves in the landscape and this role of stewardship. And so this is something that we've noticed is like missing a little bit from the movement, or it can be brought in more, is how do we design our spaces with humans in mind as well, so that we are coexisting. And so, some of the work I did before this is focused on design. How do we create spaces that we as humans love, that we want to be in, and that the planet needs? And so that is about, figuring out what destinations in your yard are going to get you to use it. Like some people, I've taught, workshops to tens of thousands of people, and some people want like an outdoor ping pong table because that's going to get their family outside. Or, they want a snag and a bench by it so they can watch the birds come back. So what gets us to spend time outside? Because I think the data is like Americans spend about 8% of their time outside. And most of that is walking between a house and a car, or a building and a car. And so changing that dynamic so we spend more time outside so that we notice the things that we want to manage or that we want to experience wonder on. I think that is something that unlocks this, because otherwise it can be overwhelming to feel like, you have to plant all these native plants and be gardening all the time. It's like, you want to make this fun. If we're not making it enjoyable for people to be in their outdoor spaces right outside their door, not just going on hikes or to incredible national parks, but right outside their door, then we failed. Like, we've got to make it fun and cool and with you in mind. I think those are some of the learnings that we've seen and that we're trying to bring more prominently into the work and the way we present things to folks.
Well, that is so smart, because at the same time that you're restoring the land, you are restoring people's relationships to land by creating spaces that invite them outdoors to notice the biodiversity around them, to generate that wonder. Oh, that's beautiful. One of the other things that sets your work apart, which I find really interesting, is that you chose to build Wildr Places, which is a conservation-focused organization, as a for-profit company rather than a nonprofit. And I'm so interested in what drove that decision, and what have you learned about pursuing environmental impact within that business framework?
So it's interesting because it took us about a year to debate back and forth. Should we be a nonprofit or a business? Sometimes we still debate because we are so mission driven, and most folks think that we're a nonprofit and they're surprised when they find out we're not. Um, a few factors. First of all, many of us on the team come from the nonprofit sector. So I ran that global coalition on sustainability for about 5 years. We've got Murray Fisher from the Billion Oysters campaign, Bram Gunther from National Wildlife, the Nature Conservancy, excuse me. And so we sort of, the reality is, given the state of federal funding and the lack of agency that nonprofits sort of have, we decided that it would be a good idea for us to sort of control our own destiny, frankly. We actually had applied for an NSF grant for a very similar model for the app, got really, really far, did a tremendous amount of work, and then all of the funding dried up. So we realized we want to build this. We think the world needs it. And so what is the funding mechanism that's going to give us the most flexibility, right? To really pursue this and bring it to market as quickly as possible. And so that's why we decided this route. As a team, we've been very thoughtful. So it's all individuals, individual investors who care very deeply both about and believe both about the market opportunity in the business, but are all very mission driven. So we have multiple goals, if you will. We have to hit the margins, and we also have to hit our mission for everyone to sort of succeed.
I think one of the pieces is like, beyond being, masters of our own destiny and being able to make sure we can proceed without, being reliant on funding that might dry up. We also don't want to be competing for funding among all of the organizations that are doing this work as well, right? Like, it's pulling from the same pool. And so instead of be going after, the small pool of money that's available for all of these nonprofits to do this incredible work, we want to be able to elevate all of those and be this mycelial layer that can do that with some independence. And I think another side of this that we've thought about, though, is the reality of being in a capitalist society and what it means to be a human in this moment in time. And the fact that, we've looked at, past movements like organic food being one of them. And there being this inflection from when it goes from nonprofit kind of academic status to a business to I know something that people can buy. Like we are used to buying things. And so there's this being this piece of right now, this is a relatively niche movement. We've got hundreds of thousands of people doing this, but we need millions of people on the ground doing this. And to move from this kind of like intrinsic motivation to do this work to something even bigger, a hypothesis we have is that, working within kind of capitalism, giving people an opportunity to put money where their where their mouth is on things could be one of those drivers of change. So I'd say that's another piece that's still kind of in hypothesis area, and we'll see. But everything we've built so far, the campaign, everything that is in the app right now, all of that is going to remain free. And then we have hypotheses about how we can meet those margin goals. We'll test them out. Like, at some point there will be things to pay for. There's various different models that we can try, but we are very clear that the things that we've built so far are going to remain free because we want as many people as possible to access this, and then we'll figure out the rest.
Wow.
Can I double click on just one of those things? Because this is very theoretical, very potential future state, but it's sort of a vision of ours, which is we know that there is a massive need for a huge restoration economy that does not exist right now. Most, folks, laborers, kids, teens, anyone doesn't really know how to do restoration work. There's a massive gap in terms of the need and the capacity to fill it. We sort of have this dream that in the future, why wouldn't, my 14-year-old son who's looking for a summer job be able to join the app and get paid, right, by individuals, right, and whether it's municipalities, whether it's large landowners, to go and remove invasives. And then they get trained to do that and then get, paid to do that, right? All these individuals that dedicate their time, their work to restoring nature, they do it for the love of it, absolutely. But there's also a world in which they should be compensated and we should be valuing that. So these are just, very far off, but these sort of these concepts that we want to remain open and flexible for.
That is so exciting, and you've given us I think, a really intriguing and sort of magnetic goal to reach for, and that is your phrase of a restoration economy. That to me hits the marks of biocultural restoration, of biomimicry that aligns our economic system with ecological need. And what a powerful combination that could be. Zoe and Joe, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. And I have to tell you, I'm feeling very inspired, and I know our plant circle is too. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for having us. What an absolute delight to be here with you.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you so much, Plant Baby Plant. We love partnering with you guys.
Yes. Let's cause a ruckus.